Welcome back, guys. This week we're talking about the difference between anger and hostility. How anger is different from hostility. Different than hostility. I don't know which one it is. Either way, we're talking about hostility. When people in our culture, when we say anger, what we really mean is hostility. They're two different things, and it's important to separate them in our mind so we can understand what anger is specifically and how to manage it, because the whole process, it's a really beautiful thing. That's what we're doing. We're adding beauty to our lives. First thing, the beauty of recapping from last week. Anger comes in. It's an emotional response from a need or an injustice. It is an emotional response. It is a mode of operation telling you to get something met, to get a need met, to get a goal achieved. It is adrenaline. It is dopamine. It is awesome sound effects. That is the point of anger. It is a mode of operation. I'm going to talk more about what mode of operation means. Anxiety is a mode of operation too. That's what emotions are. We'll get to that in another video. A lot of teasing ahead. Well, I got a lot of information up here to share with you guys. Got a lot of love to give. And there's three things that we can do with anger. The first thing, because this is a uncomfortable, the ellipse of discomfort, we avoid it. We avoid this feeling. We distract ourselves. We rationalize defense mechanisms. Oh, I don't really need that thing. Oh, no, that's not that big of a deal. We can do that for a short amount of time. It's a short-term defense, but eventually it becomes sadness. It becomes sadness 100% of the time. Distraction, defenses against, I'm going to write this again. This is reality. This is our God. We are distracting ourselves from God. And it becomes sad. I mean, our emotions, they're modes of operation, they're conduits to reality. And that's why we're out of touch with reality, because we can't manage our emotions right. That's, this really matters. And this is where we get things like cognitive biases. We're not just not in touch with what's going on, but what that really means is we can't manage our stuff. Here's a diagram of our stuff so we can manage it. Now, we avoid going to sadness. The only way out of sadness is to become aware, group, attachments, journaling, listing out what you need specifically, and you'll find if you do this enough, the sadness will become more conscious. Our dotted line of consciousness, it will become more conscious, and we'll start to feel angry. Now, maybe you've been taught that anger is a bad thing. It's something bad in you. It is not. It is a beautiful thing again. And once we are here in anger, because it's only once we are here in anger that we can do something constructive. We can do something that not only makes our life better, but makes other people's lives better. That makes the world better. That contributes something. We're going to get to that next week, though. In the meantime, something that we could do before we become constructive with our anger is we can be destructive. Just like with anxiety, we can be destructive, go a little bit down, partially conscious, partially unconscious. And there's going to be a lot of parallels between anger and anxiety. And that's not a coincidence. And we'll get to why that is, possibly in the why emotions are modes of operation, or what even is a mode of operation. But they're parallel. There's a lot of similarities, so there's going to be a lot of similarities in this video. You could even say they're chiral. The anxiety map and anger map, they're chiral images of each other. If you don't know what chiral means, that means you didn't read a lot of Kant in college, which means you probably had a girlfriend. But this is a destructive decision. And I will write that here to make it clear. It is when we take our box of anger, the heavy box analogy, it still applies to anger. We take our box of anger, and when we're avoiding it, we go, oh, what anger? What's going on? No, I don't have this box. What are you talking about? No, I don't get angry. No, I'm not an angry kind of guy. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, we can do that, but it will become sadness. Being destructive with our anger is when we take our box of anger and we just place it out into other people. We can't manage it on our own. It's uncomfortable. We don't think we can manage it on our own, perhaps. And we go, hey, you deal with it. Here, you do this thing. Our Aunt Bertha, she would complain with her anxiety. She'd complain and put it on us. Our Uncle Vinny, He puts his anger on us. He's, hey, you deal with it. And like our Aunt Bertha was boring, our cousin or our Uncle Vinny is annoying, and that is what hostility is. We're being annoying. Now there's lots of manifestations of hostility. Again, on the continuum here, this is a little bit more conscious, a little bit more unconscious. And yet when I draw this dotted line of consciousness, it's not either or. Something isn't either totally conscious or totally unconscious. There's a lot of gray area in there. There's shades of gray. Maybe 50 shades of gray, sorry. There's shades of gray. Now, here in sadness, this is probably going to be more unconscious. An unconscious version of hostility, or more unconscious. And I would put temper here. A temper tantrum. Right? Maybe here more towards conscious is revenge. We manipulate. These are a little bit more conscious because it involves maybe a little bit more planning. Maybe I would put jealousy here in the middle. Violence. Often violence is an unconscious response. And what I mean violence, I mean preemptive violence. It may be right and justified to be violent in certain situations if people are violent to you first, just to handle the situation, to calm it down. But here, when I'm talking about hostility, I mean preemptive violence. I mean, violence might be this. We'll get to that next week, though. And this is what we do. And, and like with powerlessness in the anxiety map, people, more often, when we have problems here, we are addicted to these things. We are addicted to feeling jealous. We are addicted to our temper tantrums. We ask ourselves, and how, I'm going to write here, so I'll just write it. Responsibility. We take responsibility for this, and that is our way back towards anger, so we can eventually do something constructive with it. I know we just want to go from here to here. It's not possible. We need to take responsibility first. And how do we take responsibility for this? Is we ask ourselves, what is it about me that likes being jealous? That likes being vengeful? What is it about me that likes having a temper tantrum? I mean, it may be the case that is the only way you've ever been able to get attention, is by throwing a temper tantrum for the last 20 years, since you were 2 years old. That is how you get attention. Jealousy, that's how you connect with people, is you feel jealous and you wonder why your relationships don't work out. Well, you're not handling your anger, so it's going to manifest in some weird way down here. And it's not about, arguing with the jealousy. If you go to a cognitive therapist, that's what they'll do. They'll sit you down and go, well, this jealousy is just not very rational. Let's list out some ways in which this jealousy is irrational. You're going to see it's irrational, and then you're going to stop being jealous. It doesn't work like that. In fact, I would even call that an atrocity to therapy. We change our relationship with anger, and the jealousy takes care of itself. We understand what the need and injustice is. We get in touch with this, and then maybe we'll figure out some constructive ways to handle it. Again, we'll get to that next week. But we become addicted to this stuff. We ask ourselves, how are we responsible for this? Everything that we do in awareness, the meditation, got that out, the journaling, the connections, that's paradoxically, that's how we see our emotional life. We only see ourselves within when we see it reflected in somebody else. That's just how humans are. We need faces. Put yourself around faces and start talking. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. And on our way back from hostility again to anger, and you're going to do this right, you're doing this right, when you feel the anger. It's going to be uncomfortable. That's how you know you're growing. At least for a little bit. It's going to be uncomfortable in the short term. But hey, at least you're not here. And at least you're not here manipulating situations, feeling jealous, getting caught in this emotional loop away from reality and wondering why things aren't working out. Well, it's about changing these relationships by changing your relationships with other people. A great story about this is an old patient of mine. His name's Paul, and he's an architect. And one night, his wife and his daughter, his daughter was, I think, around 20, so more of an adult. They were followed home from the grocery store. These muggers broke into their apartment and they beat them. His wife actually died. I mean, it was terrible. His daughter was put in a coma. I mean, Paul was just completely forlorn. And I think his boss noticed this, so he sent him to Arizona. He sent Paul to Arizona to meet with a land developer, one of the clients of the architectural firm that he works for, to meet with this land developer in Arizona to talk about a project. I don't forget exactly what that was. But the point is they go to a shooting range while in Arizona, and it turns out that Paul's actually a pretty good shot. You know? And he talks with the land developer from Arizona. He knows what happened with Paul's wife and his daughter, and he goes, you know, here in Arizona, we take matters into our own hands. What he was basically saying is, you know, here in Arizona, we don't just be sad about it. We get angry. And the land developer took Paul back to the airport. He surreptitiously put a revolver in Paul's luggage. Paul didn't know about it. That's what surreptitious means. Back in New York, Paul opens up his luggage, finds the revolver there, you know, gets a little cowboy in him, takes the lesson that he learned in Arizona, and he goes, you know what? I'm going to go out and I'm going to put myself in a situation where somebody will be likely to mug me, and when they do, I'm going to shoot them back. And that's what he does. He becomes a vigilante. You know, it makes the news. Actually, crime does drop at this time, and crime was a problem because I think when this story took place, it was like 1974, 75, something like that. But what Paul does, you know, is he has a death wish. He goes out looking for trouble. He's down here. And you know what makes it a great story is because philosophically we can say, it's arguable, but I think I'll say that Paul's not doing anything wrong, philosophically. Because he's being violent, but he's not being preemptively violent. He's waiting for people to attack him, for muggers to attack him before he attacks them. But psychologically, it's not the best place for Paul to be. And just like when people have an anger problem, they don't just have the anger problem out of nowhere, or hostility problems. Even I make that mistake. When people have a problem of being jealous, they don't just feel jealous. What we do is we put ourselves in a situation in which we will feel jealous. And that's what Paul's doing here. He's putting himself in a situation in which he feels vengeful, in which he can feel his hostility. Philosophically, maybe nothing wrong with what he's doing, but psychologically, maybe not the best choice to be making. You know, his wife and his daughter's still in a coma, you know, they're gone, effectively. A lot of anger here, you know, that's an injustice, that's a need. Maybe not the best way to handle it. I forget how he does handle it. He moves to Chicago or something. Doesn't matter. The point is, you know, put this like we always do. Let's put this map in the base of our brain and really meditate on this. Understand what this means for your life, what different decisions you could possibly make. Just let it imbue, let it radiate throughout every fiber of your being. If for no other reason, then now maybe you won't be so annoying all the time.